Hello and welcome to Coffee with Craig. It is a fine Monday morning here in Sacramento. Today we're going to talk about apps. No, not apps for your cell phone. We're going to talk about apps. California's Armed and Prohibited Person System. In the wake of what occurred last week, the shooting took place in Sutherland, Texas, where an individual who should not have been able to purchase a firearm was, in fact, able to purchase multiple firearms and then eventually wound up shooting up a church. Killing 26 and injuring, I believe, 20 others. The thing about this particular situation is that this was an individual who had been convicted of domestic violence and in the end would wind up being discharged from the military. I don't believe it was a dishonorable discharge, but the prohibiting thing was that it involved domestic violence. That should have prohibited him from being able to purchase a firearm. But somehow, the Air Force didn't enter that information into their records. What's one of the things that's come up is people are looking at California's system, our armed and prohibited person system, as a model, as something that we should be considering doing in order on a national scale. And the problem, though, that they found was probably the exact same thing that happened with this system, which, by the way, in this background check system, the federal system, you guys know this, it's called NICS. If they had put that information in, it would have popped up in NICS and he would have been denied the ability to purchase a firearm. But the Armed and Prohibited Persons list, now this is a list that was created originally in 1999. It was updated in 2006. And it's been a system that's just been, fraught with a whole bunch of problems ever since it's been created. But people are saying we should do this. We should do this on a national scale. Well, one of the problems was exactly what happened in this particular case. People not entering information on time. State auditor actually did an audit of the app system and determined that a large number of hospitals, some courts, some courthouses, weren't entering the information into NICS or into apps. And either they weren't entering it at all, and if they were, almost none of them were doing it in a timely fashion. They also found that whether it was adding people to NICS or removing to apps or removing people from apps, because you wind up in the apps, there's some that are, like obviously a felony is a lifetime prohibition, domestic violence. But then in some cases, there are some misdemeanors that are actually prohibiting, but they're only prohibiting for a period of time. If you get a temporary restraining order or any sort of a restraining order, it's only active while that's in place. So once the restraining order is no longer in place, you're no longer a prohibited person. This is the sort of stuff that you have to deal with. That all has to be entered in the system and updated. Well, they come to find that there were a whole lot of people who wound up in the list that shouldn't have been for one reason or another. They were at one point and should have been removed and were never removed. And the California Department of Justice, all they ever do is cry, we need more money, we need more money, we need more money. Despite the fact that they're given tens of millions of dollars more money, they still can't find a way to manage the system. And the problem with that is that I realize to someone who's not a gun owner, they're like, well, what's the big deal? Well, get it fixed. But the problem is that people's rights are being denied. People, if you're in this list and if you're in the app system, there's a chance that someone could wind up knocking on your door to take your guns. And trust me, when they show up to take your guns, they're not showing up with a welcome basket. They're coming in full tactical gear because you are a person that has been deemed to be armed and dangerous. I just don't understand, and this is the hardest part about the whole thing, is dealing with some folks who, you try and talk to them about stuff like this, and they're like, well, but we've got to do something. We've got to do something. All I can tell you is the same thing I'll continue to tell you. As long as there are evil people who seek to do harm to others, we're going to have this problem, because those people who seek to do harm to others, they're not going to follow any of the laws that you're going to pass, that you want to pass. They're not. They don't. It was shown in this auditor's report that 40% of the people that were caught committing crimes that had guns they were already prohibited. 40% of the people who were caught and had guns, 40% of them were prohibited people. They weren't supposed to own a firearm. They were in the system. Because guess what? Criminals don't follow the law. They also don't go to gun stores to get their guns. I know, crazy, huh? Do you know who goes to gun stores to get guns? Law-abiding citizens. People who want to defend themselves from those evil people that I just mentioned. They're the only ones that are affected by these laws that you guys keep trying to push. Because they wind up in a system, they wind up in a database that eventually one day will be used as a way in which to go and find out who has their guns, who has guns, so that they can confiscate them. I hate this. I know it sounds all black helicopter and conspiracy theory-ish, but you know what? I believe it. And I think that most people who know and understand the history of tyrannical governments believe it too. What's that saying? Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Well, some of us know enough about history that we're not interested in repeating that. So anyway, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to share these videos with your friends. Let them know about the Firearms Policy Coalition and the work that we're doing here in your state, as well as in Washington, D.C. You guys, take care. We'll talk to you again later.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.